My dad and stepmom tried to force me out of the house. My mom left me for their pregnant golden child, then changed the locks, so I called police and shut them down. Hey guys, I've been holding on to this for a while, and honestly, I still can't believe it all went down the way it did. Let me break it down for you. I'm a 28-year-old, male, single, living in the house my mom left me when she passed 5 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood, not flashy, but it's comfortable, and most importantly, it's from my mom. She worked her whole life for this place, and when she was gone, she made sure I knew it was meant to give me stability. This house isn't just a roof over my head, it's her legacy. My mom was the only consistent parent I had growing up. She wasn't perfect, but she was always there when I needed her. My dad, on the other hand, checked out after the divorce. He remarried pretty quickly, and let's just say his priorities shifted. His new wife was always the center of his world, and her daughter, let's call her Savannah, was treated like royalty. Savannah's 25 now and pregnant. I don't have a problem with her being pregnant, that's not the issue. The problem is she's one of those people who just assumes the world owes her something. Her mom and my dad have been feeding that ego of hers since we were young. If Savannah wants something, she gets it. Doesn't matter if it's a new car, expensive vacations, or random stuff she decides she wants. They bend over backward to keep her happy. A total I want it, I got it attitude. I've kept my distance from all of that. I see my dad here and there, but I've made it clear that I like my space. The house is my sanctuary. It's where I can just live my life without anyone interfering. I've got a decent job, some good friends, and a pretty straightforward routine. I'm not rolling in cash, but I'm stable. That's more than a lot of people can say these days. For now, it's just me in the house, and honestly, I like it that way. No roommates, no drama, just peace and quiet, exactly what I needed after my mom passed away. Now, back to Savannah. A few months ago, her boyfriend, some guy named Tyler, left her. Honestly, I could see it coming from a mile away. He always seemed like the type to bail when things got real. Savannah didn't seem too broken up about it, though. From what I heard, she went straight back to her mom and my dad, where she was immediately babied and spoiled all over again. They cooked for her, bought her maternity stuff, and basically treated her like she was made of glass. I didn't think much of it at first. That's their business, not mine. But then, out of nowhere, my dad calls me up and says he wants to talk. This isn't something he does often, so I figured it must be important. I head over to their place, and as soon as I walk in, I can tell something's up. My dad and his wife are sitting at the kitchen table, and Savannah's there too, rubbing her belly, trying to remind everyone she's pregnant. They started off with some meaningless small talk, the kind where you know they're stalling. My dad asked how work was going, and his wife nodded along like she cared. But it didn't take long before they cut to the chase. My dad started saying Savannah needed a stable place to live, because their house was too cramped with the baby coming. Before I could even respond, his wife jumped in, her tone sharp but coated in fake concern. Well, she said, since you're living alone in that big house and you're not married or anything, it just makes sense for Savannah to move in. She needs space for the baby, and you're not exactly tied down to anything serious. You could easily find something smaller and more practical for yourself. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a declaration. Like they'd already decided this was the plan, and I just needed to fall in line. My dad chimed in, saying they'd even looked into some apartments for me, as if doing the research made their demand more reasonable. I couldn't believe it. They were clearly throwing hints, screaming that my life didn't matter, like my house was just a spare room they could shuffle people into when it suited them. The entitlement was overwhelming, as if being unmarried or childless meant I wasn't really using my life or my home the right way. At first, I thought I must have misheard them. I mean, who says something like that? But no, they were damn serious. Apparently, they'd been planning this for a while, just waiting for the right time to bring it up. I told them straightforwardly, no, obviously. This house isn't just a piece of property to me, it's my home, and it's one of the last connections I have to my mom. The idea of giving it up, especially for someone like Savannah, was just absurd. I tried to explain that, but they weren't hearing it. They kept going on about how family helps family, and how I don't really need all that space since I don't have a family of my own. It was like talking to a wall. No matter what I said, they just kept pushing. Savannah barely said anything during the conversation, but the smug look on her face said it all. She was confident they'd wear me down and get what they wanted. That's how it's always been with her. She's used to people caving in and giving her exactly what she wants. At one point, I turned to her and asked, Savannah, do you really want to sit in my house? I mean, seriously, this is my home, my space. Why don't you take one of those apartments you guys so helpfully looked up? You've already done the legwork. Why is it suddenly ridiculous for you to use those options but okay to take mine? She just blinked at me. Like the concept of her being the one to compromise was completely foreign. Her mom jumped in with her sugar-coated voice saying, "Oh honey, you don't understand. Savannah needs stability. An apartment won't provide the same comfort and space for her and the baby." I laughed bitterly. "So my stability doesn't matter? My comfort doesn't count? You guys are unbelievable. You walk in here demanding I uproot my entire life for Savannah's sake, and you expect me to just roll over and say yes?" Savannah didn't flinch, just sat there with her arms crossed, that smug look plastered on her face, like she'd already won. She wasn't even trying to engage, leaving her mom and my dad to do all the dirty work for her. It was obvious she didn't think she needed to explain herself. In her mind, it wasn't a request, it was an inevitable outcome. Her mom jumped in, her voice sharp and condescending. "It's not about your comfort. This is about what's best for the family. Savannah is bringing a new life into this world. Don't you think that's a little more important than your need for space? You're a grown man. You don't need a big house all to yourself. It's selfish to hold on to something that could give her and the baby a better start in life." I stared at her, stunned by the sheer audacity. "Selfish? Are you serious right now? You think I'm selfish for keeping what my mom left me? This isn't just some space I'm clinging to. This is my home. This is where I've built my life, and you're sitting here telling me I should just hand it over like it's nothing?" My dad sighed, clearly frustrated, and decided to jump in. "We're not asking you to give it up forever," he said, as if that somehow made it better. "Just think of it as helping Savannah get back on her feet. Once she's stable, maybe she can move out and you can figure out something else for yourself. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "For everyone?" I snapped. "No, you're trying to do what's best for her. Let's not pretend this is about the family or doing what's right. This is about you bending over backward for Savannah, like you always do, and expecting me to clean up the mess. Guess what? I'm not playing along." Savannah's mom narrowed her eyes. "It's called being part of a family. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. If your mother were here, she'd—" I interrupted, my voice cold. "Don't you dare bring my mom into this. She left this house to me because she trusted me to take care of it. She knew exactly how you'd behave, and that's why none of you are even mentioned in her will. So don't sit here and tell me what she would have wanted, because you have no idea." They didn't say anything to that. My dad looked uncomfortable and went to do something else. Savannah just sat there, arms crossed, with that same smug expression. It was clear she thought I'd give in eventually. She didn't even try to argue or defend herself, just let her mom and my dad do all the talking, like she was above having to justify this ridiculous demand. To her, it wasn't a negotiation, it was just a matter of when, not if, they'd get their way. But this time, they were messing with the wrong person. This house isn't up for negotiation. My mom trusted me with it, and I'm not about to let them guilt me into giving it up. Still, I could tell this wasn't the end of it. They left the conversation open-ended, like they were expecting me to change my mind. I thought maybe they'd cool off and realize how ridiculous the whole thing was after I explicitly said no to their faces. But it was just the beginning. My dad and his wife seemed to think persistence was the key, like if they kept bringing it up, I'd eventually cave. It started with small, passive-aggressive comments. My dad would call and casually ask if I'd thought more about helping out. His wife texted me articles about the importance of supporting single mothers, as if I'd suddenly feel enlightened and offer up my home. Savannah stayed quiet for the most part, but I could tell she was confident her mom and my dad would handle everything. Then they upped the ante. They started showing up unannounced. It wasn't like they were coming over to visit, though. Every time they came, they'd find some excuse to bring the conversation back to Savannah and her needs. One time, my dad showed up with a box of baby clothes for storage. He walked in like it was the most normal thing in the world and asked where he could put it. I told him he could take it back to his house. He gave me this look, like I'd just insulted him. "It's just temporary," he said. "You're not even using the guest room." I told him the guest room wasn't for storage, it was for guests. He grumbled, but eventually took the box back to his car. That set the tone for every interaction after that. They'd bring up some solution that involved me giving up my space, and I'd shut it down. The thing is, I could tell they didn't see me as the actual owner of the house. To them, it was just a convenient resource they could use however they wanted. My mom left it to me, but they acted like it was still up for grabs, like I'd just been holding it for Savannah until she needed it. What really pissed me off was how they framed everything, as if I was the selfish one. They made it sound like I was just sitting on this treasure trove of space and refusing to share it out of spite. It wasn't enough that I said no, I had to justify my decision over and over again to people who didn't want to hear it. Things escalated when Savannah decided to insert herself into the situation more aggressively. One afternoon, she rolled up to my house, popped her trunk, and casually asked me to help her unload a stroller. I stared at her like she'd lost her mind and asked why she was bringing a stroller to my house. Well, where else am I supposed to put it? I don't have the room right now, she said. I was trying to process the sheer audacity of her statement. Not my problem, I replied, already feeling the frustration building. That, of course, triggered her. She launched into this self-centered rant about how I was making things so much harder for everyone, as if I'd personally created her problems. Family is supposed to stick together, she said, as though that somehow justified dumping her issues on me. She continued, "You don't understand how stressful it is to be in my position. You've got no idea what it's like to have a baby on the way," she added with this tone that suggested I was some clueless idiot who couldn't possibly comprehend real life. She was right about one thing. I don't know what it's like to be pregnant. But what I do know is what it's like to have responsibilities, and unlike her, I've been handling mine without expecting anyone to swoop in and fix everything for me. More importantly, I don't demand to live in other people's houses just because I don't have enough space. So I told her point blank, "Your problems aren't mine to solve, and I'm not about to turn my life upside down just because you refuse to figure out yours." That did not go over well. Her face twisted into this look of pure hatred, like I'd just told her the world didn't revolve around her, which, let's be real, I basically did. She stormed off in a huff, but not before throwing one last gem over her shoulder. "You're going to regret this someday." The irony of her whole tantrum wasn't lost on me. She'd spent her entire life being coddled and catered to, and now, for the first time, someone wasn't bending to her will. Instead of realizing how absurd her demands were, she acted like I was the one being unreasonable. Bringing a stroller to my house, assuming she'd just park herself and her baby here, was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. It was like she genuinely believed my house was already hers, and I was just an obstacle to be removed. It didn't stop there. They just kept pushing my limits. The other day, my dad came over with a realtor. He didn't even tell me he was coming. I was sitting in my living room when I heard the knock on the door. I opened it to find him standing there with a woman holding a clipboard. "I thought we could look at some options for you," he said. I didn't even let them inside. I told them to leave and slammed the door. That was the last straw for me. It was clear they weren't going to stop until I did something drastic. At that point, I knew I couldn't trust them anymore. It wasn't just about the house. It was about the principle. They thought they could bully me into submission because that's how things had always worked with Savannah. But I'm not Savannah, and I don't roll over for anyone. That night, I called a security company and arranged for cameras to be installed around my property. It wasn't a huge move, but it was a step toward protecting what was mine. I truly didn't feel safe anymore, dreading that the house could be taken from me or that they might come up with some nonsense idea to get me kicked out legally. I knew damn well they weren't going to stop until they hit a wall they couldn't climb over, so I made it my mission to be that wall. I wasn't going to play their games anymore, and I wasn't going to entertain any more conversations about how I should just hand over my house. And just like I expected, they came up with a new, even more creative idea. I came home from work one evening, tired but relieved to finally be back at my sanctuary. Except when I tried to insert my key into the lock, it wouldn't fit. At first I thought I must have grabbed the wrong key, but after a few more tries, it hit me. The locks had been changed. My heart sank, and a wave of rage surged through me as I noticed a folded piece of paper taped to the door. The note read, "We've changed the locks for safety. Please contact us to discuss this." It was signed by my dad. The audacity was almost laughable. I didn't waste a second. I pulled out my phone and called my dad. He picked up after a few rings, his tone casual, like this wasn't the most insane thing he'd ever done. "What the hell is going on?" I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Why are the locks on my house changed?" "It's temporary," he said, like that somehow made it better. "We were just trying to help Savannah. You've been so resistant, and we thought maybe this would be the easiest way to make things smoother for everyone." "For everyone?" I snapped. "You mean for you and Savannah? You've crossed every line imaginable. This is trespassing, and if you think I'm just going to let this slide, you're insane." His tone shifted immediately, and he started begging me. "Please don't call the cops. Don't escalate this. It'll look bad for the family." "Look bad for the family? You think that's my concern right now?" I shot back. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get whoever changed those locks to fix this immediately, or I will call the cops, and I'll press charges for trespassing and attempted theft." There was a pause, and for a moment, I thought he might actually try to argue with me. But he must have realized I wasn't bluffing because his tone softened further. "Okay, fine, we'll fix it," he said. "But you're being so unreasonable. We're just trying to do what's best for Savannah and the baby. You know this is a temporary solution." I ignored his attempt to guilt me. You have until the end of the day to fix this, or the police will be involved. That's not negotiable. After some more muttering and weak protests, he finally agreed. I hung up without another word, my hands shaking with anger. This wasn't just another overreach, this was a direct, calculated move to take what wasn't theirs. It was a blatant violation of my home, my boundaries, and my trust. A few hours later, the locksmith returned, and the locks were changed back. My dad didn't show his face, and neither did Savannah or her mom. I stood by the door the entire time, watching every move, ensuring nothing was left undone. Once everything was back to normal, I sat down in my living room, staring at the walls of the house that had become my battlefield. This wasn't just another attempt to guilt me or push my limits. This was a declaration of war. I knew then that things weren't going to de-escalate on their own. If they were willing to go this far, there was no telling what they'd try next. But if they thought I was just going to roll over and let them have their way, they were in for a rude awakening. That night, I stayed up late, going through paperwork and making calls. I wanted to make sure there was no way they could pull something like that again. But what really got to me was how they acted like this was normal. They genuinely thought they were entitled to my house. It didn't matter that my mom had left it to me or that I'd been living there for years. To them, it was just a house, something they could take if they wanted it badly enough. I started moving toward taking legal action. I sat down with my lawyer and told him about everything. How my dad and stepmom had been pressuring me nonstop, how they'd gone as far as changing the locks on my house. He listened carefully, asking pointed questions about the house, my mom's will, and any unusual behavior from my dad in recent months. At first, I thought he was just being thorough, but then he leaned back in his chair and said, "I need to tell you something. Your dad has already inquired about contesting your mom's will." I was confused. "What do you mean, contesting it? When?" "Months ago," he explained. He didn't file anything officially, but he did consult with a lawyer about the possibility of claiming the house as family property instead of your inheritance. From what I gather, he was looking for any loophole he could use to gain control of the house. I sat there, stunned. All this time, while pretending to be on my side or at least trying to keep the peace, my dad had been plotting to take the house out from under me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment idea cooked up by my stepmom. They'd been planning it for months, long before they even started pressuring me to move out. "He doesn't have a strong case," my lawyer added quickly, probably noticing the panic on my face. "Your mom's will is airtight, and the house was explicitly left to you. But the fact that he even considered it says a lot about his intentions. It wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated. My dad had been looking for ways to take what my mom left me, while pretending to care about my well-being. The manipulation, the constant guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, it all made sense now. This wasn't about Savannah needing a place to stay. It was about them trying to take something they had no right to. Hearing this made my frustration boil over. This isn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It's about protecting what my mom worked her whole life to give me. Every move they make feels like a slap in the face to her memory, and I can't let that slide. No matter how relentless or outrageous they get, I'm not backing down. This house is mine, and they're not taking it. I'll let you guys know what happens next. Update 1. Hey everyone. I thought I'd give you an update once I figured out what to do, so here we go. After everything I'd learned from my lawyer, I spent the rest of that night replaying every interaction with my dad over the past few months. I couldn't keep avoiding him and proceed legally. I had to directly tell him that I knew what he'd been planning. So I confronted him. I didn't bother calling or texting. I showed up at his house unannounced, just like he and his wife had done to me so many times before. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, caught off guard, but there wasn't even a flicker of guilt on his face. That was the part that stung the most. He acted like he had nothing to feel ashamed about. "I need to know why you've been looking into contesting Mom's will," I said, cutting straight to the point. His face twisted into a mix of confusion and defensiveness. "What are you talking about?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "I don't know where you're getting this idea, but it's not true." "Don't lie to me," I shot back. "I already know you spoke to a lawyer about it months ago. So let's hear it. What were you planning to do?" "It's not like that," he insisted, stumbling over his words. "I wasn't trying to take anything. I just wanted to see if there were options for the family." "For the family?" I repeated, my voice sharp with disbelief. "Let's be real, it's not about the family, it's about Savannah. Don't stand here and pretend this is about anything else. You were planning to take the one thing Mom left me, and you think that's okay?" I wasn't planning anything, he snapped. I was just considering possibilities. That house is too big for you anyway, and Savannah, she's in a tough spot. She needs a stable home for the baby. And that means stealing mine? I countered, my frustration boiling over. You didn't even ask for my help. You went behind my back, tried to manipulate me, and now you're acting like you're doing me some kind of favor. It wasn't like that, he repeated weakly, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. He looked everywhere but at me, the way he always did when he didn't want to admit he was wrong. I stood there for a moment waiting to see if he'd say something that might justify any of this. He didn't. I shook my head and turned to leave. There was no point in arguing with someone who couldn't even own up to their actions. That conversation cemented everything I already knew. I couldn't trust him. He wasn't acting like a father. He was acting like someone who thought my life, my home, and my choices were his to control because it fit his own narrative. Back at home, I called my lawyer to discuss what to do next. He reassured me that my mom's will was rock solid and that my dad didn't have a legal leg to stand on. Still, it was clear this wasn't just about legalities. It was about wearing me down. They were trying to make me feel like the fight wasn't worth it, like it would be easier to just give in and let them have their way. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, emails, and constant vigilance. I filed paperwork to ensure the house was fully secured in my name, with no loopholes they could exploit. I upgraded my security system, added more cameras, and even reached out to a title protection service to keep an eye out for any shady activity. It felt like I was fortifying a castle against invaders, and honestly, that's exactly what it was. Savannah, meanwhile, doubled down on her tactics. She started posting cryptic messages on social media about being abandoned by family and having to fight for what's right. She didn't name me directly, but it was obvious who she was talking about. Mutual acquaintances started reaching out, asking what was going on and if there was any way to smooth things over. I kept my responses short and factual. I wasn't interested in playing her game or airing my side of the story to the world. But as the weeks went on, their efforts started to falter. The legal fees were piling up on their end, and my lawyer assured me they'd run out of options soon. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. People like them don't just give up, they regroup, find new angles, and come back when you least expect it. By the time everything finally settled down, I was absolutely drained. Fighting for my home, my peace, and my boundaries took everything I had, but it was worth it. This wasn't just about a house, it was about standing up for myself and refusing to let anyone walk all over me. My dad and Savannah thought they could guilt me into submission, but they were so wrong. If anything, this whole ordeal just opened my eyes to how far they'd go to manipulate me. Honestly, I'm starting to think cutting ties might be the only way to truly move forward. For now, things are quiet, but I'm not naive. If they try pulling any stunts again, I'll be ready. If anything changes, I might just come back with an update. Thanks for sticking around and hearing me out. If you've got any advice or just some solidarity to share, I'd love to hear it. Final update. Hey guys, I wanted to give you an update on everything that's happened since the last time I shared. It's been a wild ride, but I finally feel like I'm coming out on the other side of all this madness. I'm still in my house, thankfully, and it's staying that way. Let me break it down for you. After they tried every possible way to drag me out of the house, they backed off for a while. Weeks turned into months, and things went eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, and no random visits from Savannah or her mom. It felt strange, almost like they were regrouping, but I wasn't going to complain about the peace. During that time, Savannah had her baby, a healthy little boy, from what I heard through the grapevine. I figured maybe they were too busy with the baby to keep bothering me, or maybe they'd finally given up. It was late one evening when I heard the knock. I checked my security cameras, and there they were, my dad, his wife, and Savannah, all standing there like they were about to stage an intervention. I debated ignoring them, but decided to open the door, mostly because I wanted to hear what excuse they'd come up with this time. The second I opened the door, my dad's wife started in with her usual nonsense. She said they'd been thinking about everything that had happened and wanted to move forward as a family. She talked about letting bygones be bygones and said they were giving me one last chance to make things right. Then Savannah spoke up, holding her baby like a prop. She went on about how hard things had been for her, how she wanted her child to grow up surrounded by family, and how she still believed I could do the right thing if I just opened my heart. It was the same manipulative garbage they'd been spouting for months, but now they were wrapping it up in a prettier package. My dad, ever the mediator, tried to play the let's all just get along card. He talked about how family is more important than material things, and how I needed to look at the bigger picture. I let them talk for a while, mostly out of morbid curiosity. When they finally stopped, I took a deep breath and laid it all out. "This is my house," I said as calmly as I could manage. "It was left to me by my mom, and I'm not giving it up. I've told you this before, and I'm telling you again, the answer is no. I don't care what kind of speech you've rehearsed or how you're trying to spin this. You're not getting the house, and that's final. That should have been the end of it, but of course, it wasn't." Savannah's mom immediately launched into accusations, shouting about how selfish I was, claiming I was putting material things over family and failing to fulfill my so-called duty. She threw out every argument she could think of, trying to frame me as the villain in this whole situation. Savannah jumped in next, following the same script as always. She cried about how hard I was making her life, and how she couldn't believe I would abandon her and the baby in their time of need. She threw out the classic line that I'd regret this one day, as if I'd somehow look back and wish I'd let them walk all over me. My dad didn't say much at first, but the silence spoke louder than anything. He stood there, watching the whole thing unfold, not even attempting to mediate or diffuse the situation. It was clear he didn't know what to say anymore, and maybe a small part of him realized just how far this had gone. I wasn't in the mood to argue. They'd crossed every line already, and I wasn't about to let them pull me into another pointless shouting match. "You've already crossed every boundary I have," I said. "You've lied, manipulated, and tried to steal what's mine, and now you're back here acting like you're the victims. I'm done with this. Get off my property." Unsurprisingly, they didn't leave. Savannah's mom kept going, insisting that I was being unreasonable and trying to guilt me into backing down. Savannah chimed in here and there, adding little comments about how families should support each other and how I was heartless for not stepping up. My dad finally spoke, but all he could manage was another weak plea for me to be reasonable and see things from their perspective. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I turned around, walked back into the house, and locked the door behind me. I'd already decided I wasn't playing their games anymore. If they wanted to keep pushing, they could deal with the consequences. Once inside, I called the police. I wasn't bluffing, and I wasn't going to let them think I was. When I explained the situation, the dispatcher assured me an officer would be sent out shortly. I waited by the window, watching as they lingered in my driveway, still talking amongst themselves. By the time the police arrived, they had moved off the porch but weren't making any effort to leave. The officers spoke with them for a few minutes, clearly laying down the law. From what I could see, the cops weren't buying into their excuses or justifications. They told them in no uncertain terms to leave and not come back. Watching them finally leave under police supervision felt like a small victory, but it also came with a sense of finality. Whatever shred of a relationship I had left with my dad was gone. As I sat down to collect my thoughts, I realized just how exhausted I was. They had taken so much out of me, not just time and energy, but also the sense of security I'd felt in my own home. Still, I knew I'd made the right choice. Setting boundaries with people like that wasn't just necessary, it was survival. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just done with the house drama, I was done with them altogether. I blocked their numbers, unfollowed them on social media, and made it clear to mutual acquaintances that I didn't want updates or messages passed along. Cutting ties was hard at first, but when I looked back at everything they'd done, I realized there was nothing left to salvage. They didn't care about me or my boundaries. They only cared about what I could give them. Instead of having a toxic family, I leaned on my friends more. They'd been there for me through all the chaos, reminding me that I wasn't crazy for standing my ground. One of them suggested I throw a housewarming party, not because the house was new, but because I'd fought so hard to keep it. The idea made me laugh, but it also felt fitting. The party was small, just a handful of close friends, but it was perfect. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Looking back on everything, I'm proud of the way I handled it. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I stood my ground, and I proved to myself that I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. This house is more than just a place to live. It's a reminder of everything I fought for. It's a symbol of my independence, my resilience, and my ability to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't about blood. It's about respect, trust, and mutual support. And if someone isn't willing to give you those things, they don't deserve a place in your life, no matter who they are. So, to anyone out there who's facing something similar, stand your ground, set your boundaries, and don't let anyone guilt you into crossing them. You don't owe anyone your peace, your stability, or your happiness. I've moved on from all of this now. I still live in my house, and every time I walk through the door, I'm reminded of what I've overcome. It's not just a house, it's home, and I'm not letting anyone take that away from me. Thank you guys for reading.